I had everything: cars, a mansion, money in the bank, but I was empty inside. Then I met her, a woman who had nothing to gain from me, but everything to give. And what she gave me was something I never knew I needed: real love. Stick around, because this isn't just about wealth, love, or race. It's about how the right person can change your entire world when you least expect it. If you've ever felt like something's missing in your life, this story is for you. I used to think success was a straight line: work hard, make money, buy the house, the cars, the watches. I did that. I checked every box they said mattered. By the time I was 32, I was living in a penthouse overlooking the city, flying private, eating at places where the bill could pay someone's rent. People looked at me like I had it all, and truthfully, I thought I did too. At least that's what I told myself. But late at night, when everything was quiet and the world stopped clapping, there was this feeling I couldn't shake: emptiness, like I was sitting in a room full of gold, but starving for something real. I couldn't name it back then. I just knew that no matter how much I achieved, something inside me still felt incomplete. I'd wake up next to people I barely knew, go to meetings that meant nothing to me, and celebrate wins that didn't feel like wins. I smiled a lot, laughed on cue, but inside I was tired, not just physically, soul tired. People see the lifestyle, but they never ask about the cost, the emotional cost, the human cost, and for the longest time, I didn't know how to explain it. On the outside, my life looked like a highlight reel: red carpet events, exclusive parties, luxury vacations. I was everywhere people dreamed of being. My social media, carefully curated: smiles, success, champagne. And truthfully, I leaned into it. I liked the attention, I liked the illusion. Women noticed me everywhere I went. Some didn't even wait for me to approach. They'd come right up, drop their number, and make it clear what they wanted. I won't lie, I indulged. It felt good, for a while. But after the party ended, after the people left and the music faded, I was back in that big condo by myself. Just me and my thoughts. That silence hits different when you've been pretending to be full all day, but you're running on empty inside. I had people around me all the time, but none of them really knew me, and I didn't let them. I had this wall up, like if I kept things surface level, no one could hurt me. But really, I was just scared, scared of being seen, scared of being known. Most of the relationships I had were transactional. People wanted something from me: money, access, image, and I let them, because I didn't know what else love was supposed to look like. I told myself I didn't need more. I told myself this was the life I worked for. But deep down, I wanted something real. Someone real. Not just someone to stand next to me at the club, but someone who saw through all the noise and still chose me. The version of me that wasn't rich or polished or performing. The one who just wanted to exhale and be himself. But I didn't know how to ask for that. I didn't even know it existed. I wasn't looking for anything that day. Just stopped by this small local cafe because my usual spot was packed. No security, no assistance, just me trying to get a coffee and maybe 5 minutes of peace. The place had this quiet charm: old jazz playing low, handwritten chalkboard menu, shelves with books no one was reading. It was the kind of place I would have ignored back in the day. Too simple, too ordinary. But that day, it felt good to hide. She was behind the counter. No flashy makeup, no attitude, just presence. Calm, real, grounded. When she asked what I wanted, I said, "Surprise me." She smiled and said, "All right, but if you hate it, don't blame me." It wasn't flirtatious, just natural, easy. She treated me like a regular person. No double takes, no googly eyes, no, "Wait, aren't you that guy?" She didn't care who I was, and I felt that. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't being looked at, I was being seen. We talked for a few minutes while I waited, about books, coffee, life. Nothing deep, but it felt deeper than any conversation I'd had in months. Her name was Nia, and the way she carried herself, humble but confident, stuck with me. I left with my coffee, but her energy followed me. For the first time in years, I caught myself thinking about someone who didn't want anything from me. She didn't even ask for my name. That might have been the thing that hit me hardest. She didn't see a millionaire. She just saw a man. And that was the beginning of everything I didn't know I needed. I went back to that cafe the next day, and the day after that. Not because the coffee was life-changing, but because something about her stayed on my mind. With Nia, there was no pressure, no pretending. She didn't care about my watch, my shoes, or the car I pulled up in. Half the time, I don't even think she noticed. We'd just talk about random things: music, childhood memories, stories about her grandmother, how she loved thunderstorms. And I listened, really listened, because for once, I wasn't trying to impress, I was just being. It didn't happen fast. There was no movie moment, no dramatic first date, just small, real moments. She'd recommend a book, and I'd actually read it. I'd tell her about my day, like really tell her, and she'd listen like it mattered. No judgment, no ego. She had this way of making space for people, not with grand gestures, just presence. And I realized how rare that was. Most women I'd known before wanted to be seen with me. They liked the image. But Nia, she wanted to see me, understand me, challenge me. The more time we spent together, the more I felt my guard lowering. I started opening up about things I usually kept buried: my fears, the pressure of being successful, the loneliness behind the lifestyle, and she never flinched, never made me feel weak for sharing. What shocked me most was how comfortable I felt being quiet around her. No need to fill the silence, no performance, just peace. With her, I didn't feel like a brand. I felt like a man. And even though I didn't say it out loud yet, I was falling, slowly, steadily, and deeply. For the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing a fantasy. I was walking into something real. Before Nia, I thought love was either transactional or temporary, something that looked good in pictures, felt good for a while, and eventually faded when things got too real. That's what I was used to: conditional attention, temporary affection. But with her, everything was different. Love wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, steady, and honest. She didn't love me for what I could give her. She loved me for who I was underneath all the layers I had learned to hide behind. She taught me how to be vulnerable, not by forcing it, but by being it. The way she shared her thoughts, her feelings, even her fears, it made me realize how emotionally guarded I'd been. I had built walls so high around myself that I didn't even know who I was behind them. But Nia didn't climb those walls. She waited patiently while I tore them down, brick by brick, and she made me feel safe doing it. She called me out when I needed it, but with kindness. She challenged my ego, not to hurt me, but to help me grow. She saw the parts of me I didn't like to show, and instead of running, she leaned in. I'd never had someone see my brokenness and not flinch. That kind of acceptance, that's healing. I started to understand that love isn't about perfection or performance. It's about showing up, listening, apologizing, growing. With Nia, I didn't have to be strong all the time. I didn't have to lead every conversation or have all the answers. I could just be. And in that space, I learned how to love. Not with gifts, not with grand gestures, but with presence, truth, and vulnerability. She showed me that real love doesn't look like the movies. It looks like mutual growth. Being with Nia opened my eyes to more than just love. It gave me a deeper connection to who I was and where I came from. I had spent so much time in high places, in rooms where I was the only black man in a suit, speaking their language, fitting their mold. I knew how to move in those spaces. I mastered the game. But in doing so, I started to drift from parts of myself I didn't even realize I was neglecting. Nia brought me back to that. She carried her blackness with pride, not just in how she looked, but in how she spoke, what she valued, what she stood for. She moved through the world with strength, grace, and a kind of fire that didn't need to be loud to be felt. She'd tell me stories about her upbringing, her mother's wisdom, the quiet power in community. And every time, I felt something in me respond, like a part of me that had been sleeping was finally waking up. We didn't always agree on everything. We came from different neighborhoods, different experiences. But those differences never divided us, they deepened the bond. She challenged me to think beyond myself, to see how my success could be used for more than status, for legacy, for impact. Being with her reminded me that love isn't just about connection, it's also about culture, about roots, about seeing and being seen on a level that goes deeper than surface. With Nia, I didn't feel like I had to shrink or shift who I was. I could be proud of my journey and still reach back to where I came from. And that kind of love, the kind that connects you to something bigger than yourself, that's rare, that's real. I wish I could say everything stayed perfect, but that's not how real love works. We hit a wall. Or maybe I did. See, I was still unlearning years of emotional survival, still struggling to fully show up. One night we got into a conversation, nothing big at first, but I said something careless, something prideful, and she caught it. She didn't yell, she just got quiet, that kind of silence that speaks louder than words. She looked at me and said, "You still think love is something you can control. You don't know how to let it in." And she was right. I wanted to love her my way, on my timeline, in my comfort zone. But real love doesn't work like that. It requires surrender, and I wasn't ready to give it. After that night, she pulled back, and I felt it. For the first time in our connection, I felt distance. She wasn't cold, she was just protecting her peace, and that hit harder than any argument ever could. I realized I had been so focused on not losing control, I was about to lose the one thing in my life that was real. I sat alone for hours that night, thinking about what it would mean to lose her. Not because of some scandal or betrayal, but because I couldn't soften, because I couldn't trust love enough to let it change me. That was the breaking point. The moment I saw myself clearly, flaws, fears, all of it. And I knew, if I wanted this to work, I had to show up differently. Not just for her, but for myself. Because what we had was too rare to let pride destroy it. And I had finally learned, love isn't something you earn, it's something you honor. After that night, I knew I couldn't just say sorry and expect things to go back to how they were. This wasn't about fixing one moment, it was about fixing a pattern. I had to take responsibility, not just for how I hurt her, but for how I kept running from my own healing. So I did something I'd never done before. I sat with my discomfort, no distractions, no ego, just me facing the truth. I reached out to her a few days later. I didn't come with gifts or grand gestures. I came with honesty. I told her everything, how I'd spent years hiding behind my success, how I was scared to be vulnerable because deep down, I didn't believe I was worthy of the kind of love she was offering. I didn't try to impress her this time. I just wanted her to see that I was finally ready to grow. And she listened. Not with open arms right away, but with an open heart. She told me love can't grow without accountability, that it's not about perfection, it's about effort, consistency, truth. And from that moment, I made a choice to show up differently, not just in the relationship, but in life. I started therapy. I reconnected with friends and family I'd kept at a distance. I slowed down, stopped using work as an escape, and every time I showed up with intention, she met me there, with patience, with grace. We didn't just pick up where we left off, we rebuilt brick by brick on a foundation of trust and truth. She didn't save me, she showed me how to save myself. And once I did, I was finally ready to love her in the way she deserved, fully, freely, and fearlessly. I used to think wealth was all about numbers, bank accounts, investments, properties, how many things you could buy, how many rooms you could fill. But none of it ever filled me. Not the applause, not the attention, not the access. It took almost losing the best thing in my life to realize. Wealth isn't about what you have. It's about what you feel. And with Nia, I finally felt rich in a way that had nothing to do with money. She brought peace into my life, not just in the quiet, easy moments, but even when things were messy. She didn't need me to be a provider. She needed me to be present. That shifted something deep in me. I stopped chasing things and started creating space. Space for joy, for healing, for connection. I wasn't living to impress anymore. I was living to experience. And that's when everything started to feel meaningful. We still had our challenges, but we faced them together, like partners. We laughed more. We talked about legacy, what kind of impact we wanted to have, not just on each other, but on our community. She reminded me that success without purpose is just noise, and love, when it's real, gives your life a rhythm that money never could. I still live in a nice home. I still drive a fast car, but none of that defines me now. What defines me is the peace I feel when I wake up next to someone who knows the real me and chooses me anyway. Someone who doesn't care about the world's opinion of me, only the truth of who I am. That's the real wealth. That's what she gave me, and no amount of money could ever come close to that. Looking back now, it's wild how much can change when you let yourself be seen. The man I was when I met Nia, he was successful but disconnected, surrounded but deeply alone. He had everything but understood nothing about what really mattered. And now, I'm still that man in some ways, but I'm also more, because I let love stretch me, break me, rebuild me. Nia didn't just walk into my life, she redefined it. She showed me that strength isn't about how much you carry, it's about knowing when to let go. That love isn't about being needed, it's about choosing each other every day without ego. And most of all, that a relationship grounded in truth, in respect, in presence, that kind of love is rare, but it's real and it's worth protecting. We still wake up and make coffee together, sometimes in silence, sometimes laughing at nothing. It's not always perfect, but it's honest. And every time I look at her, I'm reminded that the best thing that ever happened to me didn't come wrapped in luxury or flashing lights. It came wrapped in simplicity, in sincerity, in soul. I share this not because I have all the answers, but because maybe someone out there needs to hear it. All the success in the world means nothing if your heart is empty. Real wealth? It's not the life you build for others to admire, it's the love you build that makes you whole. And me? I'm whole now, because I stopped running, I let someone in, and she loved me in a way I didn't even know I needed. And that kind of love, that's legacy, that's forever. That's the kind of story I'll never stop telling. If you've ever believed that love isn't for people like you, or that money can fill the emptiness, just remember, sometimes it takes the right person to show you what real wealth looks like. If this story touched you, like and share it. Someone else might need to hear it too.